She's been sending you signals all night. Her body has been practically begging you to notice, and you missed every single one. This isn't an insult, it's a diagnosis. Because right now, at this very moment, there are men sitting across from women who want them, and they have no idea. They're focused on finding the perfect words, calculating the right joke, trying to decode what she said, when the real conversation is happening in complete silence. Her body is speaking a language older than any spoken tongue, and most men are functionally illiterate. Here's what nobody tells you. A woman's attraction doesn't announce itself. Evolution designed her to be covert. For hundreds of thousands of years, the women who survived and passed on their genes weren't the ones who made their desire obvious. They were the ones who could signal interest while maintaining plausible deniability. The ones who could say yes with their bodies while their words stayed protected. That ancient programming is still running. It runs in every woman you've ever met. And today, I'm handing you the source code. We're going to expose 6 biological switches that activate in a woman's body when real attraction takes hold. These aren't guesses. These aren't theories cooked up in some internet forum. These are neurological and physiological responses documented in peer-reviewed research and refined by millions of years of sexual selection. They fire automatically. She cannot suppress them, and once you learn to recognize them, you'll never wonder where you stand again. No more analyzing texts for hours. No more asking your friends what she meant. No more walking away from an interaction uncertain if she was interested or just being polite. You'll know, because her body already told you. Let's expose the first switch. Switch 1. The autonomic confession. The most powerful lust switch is the one she has absolutely no say over. I call it the autonomic confession. This is her own nervous system betraying her, leaking attraction through physiological responses that bypass conscious control entirely. When genuine desire ignites, a woman's sympathetic nervous system kicks into gear. This is the same system that handles fight or flight responses, but in the context of attraction, it creates what psychologists call arousal transfer. Her physiology shifts, her body prepares, and it leaves visible traces. The most reliable trace is pupil dilation. When we encounter something or someone we find desirable, the brain releases a surge of dopamine and norepinephrine. This neurochemical cocktail causes the pupils to expand, sometimes dramatically, up to 45% larger than baseline. She can fake enthusiasm in her voice. She can manufacture interest in her words. She can paste on a smile that means nothing. But she cannot, under any circumstances, consciously control the muscles in her irises. If you're in consistent lighting and her pupils bloom when she looks at you, that's not an accident. That's her brain's reward circuitry lighting up. That's the lust switch flipping in real time. But the confession runs deeper. Watch for the flush. Arousal triggers vasodilation, the widening of blood vessels near the skin's surface. This creates subtle reddening across the cheeks, neck, and upper chest. It's called the sex flush, and it's completely involuntary. Her body is advertising its state without her consent. Notice her breathing. It becomes slightly more rapid, slightly shallower. Her lips may part as oxygen demand increases. In heightened states, you might even detect a slight tremor in her voice, a micro shake that betrays the adrenaline now coursing through her system. Imagine this. You're deep in conversation with her. The topic shifts to something you genuinely care about. You speak with conviction, with presence, and as you do, you catch it. Her pupils expand. A warmth rises across her cheekbones. Her chest rises faster. Her lips part just slightly. She says nothing about how she feels. She doesn't have to. Her autonomic nervous system just confessed on her behalf. Now here's where most men make a critical error. They see one signal and think they've cracked the code, but attraction doesn't work that way. What I'm about to show you is how these signals stack, and why the next switch is where things get physical. Switch 2, the territorial collapse. The second switch moves from her physiology into the space around her. I call it the territorial collapse. This is where her instinctive need for protective distance begins to dissolve, and she starts surrendering territory to you. Anthropologist Edward Hall spent decades mapping human spatial behavior. He identified 4 distinct zones we carry around us like invisible force fields: public space, social space, personal space, and intimate space. That innermost zone, roughly 18 inches from the body, is sacred. We guard it fiercely. We only allow trusted allies and desired partners inside. When a woman's lust switch flips, her territorial programming starts to rewrite itself, and you can see it happen in real time. First, watch the barriers. A woman who isn't attracted maintains obstacles between you. Her drink stays in front of her chest. Her purse sits on her lap. Her phone creates a wall. These aren't random placements, they're subconscious fortifications. She's protecting her space. But when attraction takes hold, those barriers begin to fall. The drink moves to the side, the purse drops to the floor, the phone disappears into a pocket. She's not just making room, she's dismantling her defenses. Some ancient part of her brain has decided you're not a threat, you're an opportunity. Then comes the lean. Her torso tilts toward you. Her head angles in your direction. When you say something that lands, she tips forward rather than settling back. This isn't random fidgeting. This is her body closing distance without her conscious awareness. In group settings, the territorial collapse becomes even more obvious. Watch where she positions herself. Notice who she stands next to when she has options, and pay close attention to her feet. The feet are the most honest part of the body because we almost never think to control them. If her feet point towards you while her face is turned elsewhere, her subconscious has already cast its vote. Picture a crowded house party. She's engaged in a conversation with someone else, but every few seconds, her body reorients slightly. Her feet stay aimed at you. When you move across the room, her position shifts to maintain sight lines. She's not consciously tracking you, but her body has decided you're the most important thing in that room. The key is recognizing the shift. You're not looking for someone with a naturally close conversational style. You're looking for the collapse that happens specifically because you're there. When barriers fall specifically in your presence, when distance closes specifically toward you, that's the territorial collapse activated. Switch 3, the synchronization instinct. The third switch is one of the most fascinating phenomena in human interaction. I call it the synchronization instinct. This is when her brain begins unconsciously mirroring your movements, matching your rhythms, syncing with your physical presence. Neuroscientists have identified what they call the mirror neuron system, specialized brain cells that fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing it. These neurons are the biological foundation of empathy, imitation, and deep rapport. And when attraction activates them, they create a visible dance of coordination. When her synchronization instinct engages, she'll start matching you without realizing it. You lean in, she leans in moments later. You touch your face, her hand drifts toward her own. You take a drink, she reaches for hers. You shift your posture, and within 30 seconds, hers adjusts to match. This isn't deliberate copying. That would be obvious and strange. This is deep neural entrainment happening completely below conscious awareness. Her brain has identified you as someone significant, someone worth being in tune with, and it's automatically calibrating her body to yours. A study published in the Journal of Nonverbal Behavior found that mutual mirroring between two people was one of the strongest predictors of mutual attraction. The more synchronized two people become, the more connected they feel. And here's where it gets interesting. Mirroring creates rapport, and rapport intensifies mirroring. It's a feedback loop that amplifies itself once it starts. Listen for vocal matching as well. If you speak slowly and deliberately, notice if her speech pattern slows to match. If your voice drops into a lower register, does hers soften? These auditory mirrors are just as telling as the physical ones. You can test this. During conversation, make a natural gesture. Scratch your jaw, adjust your collar, run a hand through your hair, then wait. If within the next minute she makes a similar gesture, you've just witnessed the synchronization instinct in action. Her neural circuitry has tuned itself to your frequency. What I'm about to reveal next is where the signals become impossible to ignore. We're moving from unconscious mirroring into deliberate physical contact, and understanding this switch changes everything about how you read her intentions. Switch 4, the contact campaign. The fourth switch crosses the threshold from space into touch. I call it the contact campaign. This is when she begins using physical contact as a testing mechanism, probing your receptiveness while simultaneously building a bridge toward escalating intimacy. Touch is humanity's oldest form of communication. It existed for millions of years before the first word was ever spoken. And when attraction takes hold, the urge to touch becomes nearly impossible to resist, but she won't usually initiate obvious contact. Instead, she'll create small, deniable opportunities for connection, moments that give her access while leaving room to retreat if needed. Watch for the accidental brush. Her hand grazes yours when reaching for something. Her shoulder touches yours as she laughs. Her knee bumps against yours under the table and doesn't immediately pull away. These aren't accidents, they're reconnaissance missions. She's testing how you respond. Do you flinch, pull back, or do you accept the contact naturally, signaling that more is welcome? Each touch that you receive openly becomes permission for the next. The progression is gradual but deliberate. A touch on the forearm, a hand that lingers on your shoulder, a playful shove that leaves her palm against your chest a beat too long. She's building a physical vocabulary, establishing that contact between you is normal, accepted, desired. Self-touching intensifies as well. When arousal builds, the nervous energy needs an outlet. She runs fingers through her hair. She strokes her own arm. She traces along her collarbone. This serves a dual purpose. It soothes her restlessness while drawing your attention to her body, mapping out sensitive areas for your eyes to follow. The neck deserves special attention. The throat is one of the most vulnerable zones on the human body. When she tilts her head to expose it, when she runs her fingers along her neckline, she's performing an ancient gesture of trust. She's saying, without words, I feel safe enough with you to reveal what I normally protect. Watch her mouth. Arousal can cause dry mouth, triggering lip licking, but the licking itself increases blood flow to the lips, making them appear fuller and more flushed. Biting the lower lip takes this further, a gesture that concentrates your attention on her mouth while signaling tension she can barely contain. The difference between nervous habit and attraction signal is context and clustering. If these behaviors spike specifically when talking to you, specifically when the conversation intensifies, they're not random tics. They're the contact campaign in full operation. Switch 5. The gaze fixation. The fifth switch operates through the eyes, but it's far more sophisticated than simple eye contact. I call it the gaze fixation. This is when her visual attention patterns fundamentally shift, revealing a mind that has locked onto you as its primary target. Standard social eye contact follows predictable rules. We look at someone while listening, break gaze while speaking, with contact lasting roughly 3 to 5 seconds before our eyes drift elsewhere. These are the polite rhythms of normal interaction. But when attraction takes hold, these patterns break down. First, the durations extend. She holds your gaze for 6, 7, 8 seconds, longer than is socially typical, longer than feels neutral. This extended eye contact creates a powerful sense of exposure and connection. It's vulnerable, it's intimate, and it's a statement of intent, whether she realizes it or not. Then comes the triangular gaze shift. When we look at someone platonically, our focus stays on the social triangle, the area between their eyes and nose. But when attraction activates, the gaze drops. Her eyes begin flicking between your eyes and your mouth, forming a new triangle. Researchers call this the intimate gaze, and it's her visual system rehearsing scenarios her conscious mind may not have admitted to yet. The look-away pattern reveals even more. In what's known as the coy gaze sequence, she'll hold eye contact, then break it by looking down and to the side, often with a subtle smile before her eyes drift back to yours. This pattern appears across every culture ever studied. It's flirtation encoded in our species. It communicates interest while maintaining a veneer of modesty. Most telling is what happens when she believes you're not paying attention. Does she glance at you from across the room? In group conversations, does her gaze keep finding you even when others are speaking? Does she track your movements in her peripheral vision? This background monitoring is the gaze fixation at its purest. Her brain has flagged you as significant, and now her visual system can't stop checking your location, your status, your availability. We've covered 5 switches, but the final one is where everything converges. This is the signal that reveals she's not just attracted, but actively displaying for you. And once you understand it, you'll see it everywhere. Switch 6, the biological broadcast. The 6th and final switch is the biological broadcast. This is when her body shifts into display mode, automatically adjusting into postures designed to maximize her attractiveness and signal her availability. This isn't vanity. This isn't conscious posing. This is evolutionary programming taking over. When a woman's attraction reaches a certain threshold, her body begins showcasing itself in ways optimized over hundreds of thousands of years of sexual selection. Watch for the postural transformation. Her spine lengthens, her shoulders roll back, her chest lifts and presents. This expansive posture signals confidence and openness, but more importantly, it displays. It accentuates her physical form. It makes her more visible to you. The hip displacement is particularly telling. She shifts her weight to one side, creating an exaggerated curve through her waist and hip. This highlights the waist-to-hip ratio, one of the most universally attractive proportions across every culture ever studied. She's not calculating this. Her body is running an optimization program that's been refined since before humans were fully human. Hair play escalates, flipping, twirling, running fingers through it repeatedly. This does triple duty. It releases pheromone compounds trapped near the scalp. It showcases hair health, a marker of youth and genetic fitness, and it frames her face, pulling visual attention to her eyes and mouth. Wrist exposure increases. The inner wrist is thin-skinned, sensitive, subtly erogenous. When she gestures with palms up or lets her wrist turn toward you, she's showing vulnerability. She's also, according to some researchers, presenting scent signaling areas for your unconscious evaluation. Leg positioning tells its own story. If seated, crossed legs typically angle toward the object of interest. The dangling foot becomes a pointer. If standing, she may place one leg slightly in front of the other, a pose that elongates her silhouette and tilts her pelvis subtly forward. These displays intensify at peak moments. When you've said something that landed, when you've demonstrated value or status, when the tension crests, that's when the biological broadcast fires at full power. Now here's where I save you from yourself, because the biggest mistake you can make is diagnosing a single hair flip as a marriage proposal. One signal in isolation means nothing. She might touch her neck because it's sore. She might lean in because the music is loud. She might hold eye contact because she's an attentive listener. Individual signals lie. Context deceives, but clusters tell the truth. When you see 3, 4, 5 switches flipping in unison, when her pupils dilate while she leans into your space, mirroring your posture, exposing her neck, her feet pointed directly at you, you're not seeing coincidence. You're witnessing a biological cascade. You're seeing the full stack of lust switches activating together. The goal isn't to become a mechanical analyst running through a mental checklist. The goal is holistic perception, to feel the shift in the energy between you, to recognize when the totality of her signals changes specifically because you're the one she's interacting with. That's the difference between the man who guesses and the man who knows. Let's crystallize what you've learned. Switch 1, the autonomic confession, her nervous system betraying her through pupil dilation, flushing, and respiratory changes. Switch 2, the territorial collapse, barriers falling, distance closing, space being surrendered to you. Switch 3, the synchronization instinct, her body unconsciously mirroring your movements and matching your rhythms. Switch 4, the contact campaign, touch being used to test, probe, and build bridges to greater intimacy. Switch 5, the gaze fixation, eye contact patterns shifting, attention locking onto you as the primary target. Switch 6, the biological broadcast, her body automatically adjusting into display postures to maximize her attractiveness. These aren't parlor tricks. They're the biological inheritance of every human being, refined across millions of years of evolution. They're the honest conversation happening beneath the surface of every interaction, the one most men never hear. But you hear it now. This is the superpower. It cuts through ambiguity. It eliminates doubt. It lets you see the green light she's projecting while her words still play it safe. You stop wondering, you stop hoping, you start reading, you start knowing. The next step is practice. Start observing in the wild. Coffee shops, bars, parties, meetings. Watch other people interact. See if you can spot these switches flipping in real time. Train your perception until it becomes automatic, until you don't have to think about it anymore because your brain just sees it. Because once you can read this language, you can't unread it, and the game changes forever. If this opens something in you, subscribe. This is what we do here, every week, going deep on the hidden dynamics most men never learn. And for the next piece of the puzzle, watch the video on screen now. It breaks down the vocal tells that reveal her hidden desire, because once you can read her body, learning to read her voice completes the picture. Click it. I'll see you there.